The sirens didn't just flash. They locked onto her like a target. Emily Carter barely had time to register the lights before 3 patrol cars boxed her sedan against the curb. Doors flew open. Voices overlapped in sharp bursts. She sat frozen behind the wheel, hands visible on the dash, heart kicking hard against her ribs. "Step out of the vehicle! Hands where I can see them!" She complied. Slow, careful. The kind of careful you learn when one wrong move ends everything. But it didn't matter. Within 30 seconds, she was face down on the pavement, wrists wrenched behind her back, a knee pressed between her shoulder blades. Passers-by stopped. Phones came out. A woman in scrubs, white, mid-30s, calm, pinned like a threat. No one asked her name, no one checked her ID, they just cuffed her and shoved her into the back of a cruiser. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Emily Carter wasn't just a nurse. And this wasn't just a mistake. Before we go any further, if you want to see how this story ends, stay with me until the very last word. Like this video, drop a comment with the city you're watching from, and let me know how far this story travels. Now let's get into it. The holding room smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Emily sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, still cuffed. The metal bit into her wrists, but she didn't shift, didn't complain. She'd learned a long time ago that silence was its own kind of armor. Across the table, Officer Garrett Monroe leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes flat. He was maybe 45, thick around the middle, with the kind of face that had stopped caring about nuance years ago. "You gonna tell me what you were doing in that neighborhood?" he asked, driving home from the grocery store. "Uh-huh." He didn't write it down. "And the car?" "It's mine. Registration's in the glove box." "We'll see about that." Emily met his eyes. "You already ran the plates. You know it's mine." Monroe's jaw tightened. He didn't like being corrected. "You matched the description of a suspect involved in an armed robbery 2 hours ago. White female, dark jacket, same make and model. Then check my ID, check my work badge. I'm a nurse at Silverline Medical Center. I've been on shift for the last 3 days." Yeah, everyone's got a story." He stood, scraping his chair back. "Sit tight. We'll get to you when we get to you." He left. The door clicked shut behind him. Emily exhaled slowly. Her pulse was still elevated, but she kept her breathing even. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 4 counts each. The same rhythm she'd used in field hospitals when the mortars were close enough to rattle the surgical trays. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 4:47 p.m. Her shift at Silverline started at 6. Outside the interrogation room, the precinct was buzzing. Phones rang, radios crackled, officers moved between desks with the kind of controlled chaos that came from working too many cases with too few people. Monroe found his partner, Officer Vince Toller, near the coffee machine. Toller was younger, leaner, with a habit of chewing gum like it owed him money. "She say anything?" Toller asked. "Same BS. Says she's a nurse. Says the car's hers." "Is it?" Monroe shrugged. Plates came back clean. But that doesn't mean she didn't borrow it. Or steal it. Toller popped his gum. "You really think she's the one?" "I think she was in the right place at the right time, and that's enough to hold her until we sort it out." Monroe took a sip of coffee, grimaced, and tossed the cup into the trash. "Run her name again, and check if Silverline's got anyone by that name on staff." "You got it." Monroe walked back toward the holding area, but he didn't go inside. He just stood outside the door, arms folded, watching Emily through the small window. She hadn't moved, hadn't fidgeted, hadn't broken down. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. An hour passed, then another. Emily's wrists were numb, her shoulders ached. She'd asked twice to use the restroom and been ignored both times. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, the kind of sound that burrowed into your skull if you listened too long. She focused on her breathing, on staying present, on not letting the anger creep in, because anger made you sloppy, and sloppy got people killed. The door finally opened, a different officer this time, younger, with nervous energy and a clipboard that seemed too big for his hands. Officer Marcus Webb. She'd heard Monroe bark his name earlier. "Ms. Carter," Webb said, not quite meeting her eyes. "We're still processing your information. It's been 2 hours. I understand, it's just, there's a backlog." "A backlog?" Emily's voice stayed level. "For what? Running my license? Calling my employer? Or are you waiting for me to confess to something I didn't do?" Webb shifted his weight. "Look, I'm just doing my job." "So am I, or I was, until you pulled me off the street." He didn't have an answer for that. He left the clipboard on the table, probably forgot it, and walked out. Emily looked down at the papers. Incident report. Her name spelled correctly, at least. Vehicle description. Location of the stop. And then, in Monroe's handwriting, subject became argumentative, refused to cooperate. She hadn't argued, hadn't refused anything, but the report said she had. That was when the cold settled in. Not fear, something else. The realization that the truth didn't matter here, only the narrative. At Silverline Medical Center, the evening shift was falling apart. Charge nurse Rita Delgado stood at the nurse's station, phone pressed to her ear, listening to Emily's voicemail for the third time. It wasn't like Emily to no call, no show. In 4 years, she'd never missed a shift without notice, never been late, never left anyone hanging. Anything? Asked Kyle Brennan, one of the ER residents. Rita shook her head. Straight to voicemail. You try her emergency contact? She doesn't have one listed. Kyle frowned. Seriously? Seriously. Rita set the phone down and scanned the board. 12 patients waiting, 2 nurses short, and a multi-vehicle accident on the way. We'll have to redistribute her assignments. You take beds 4 through 7. I'll cover the rest. What if something happened to her? Then we'll deal with it when we know. Rita's voice was clipped, but her hands were shaking slightly as she updated the board. She didn't like this. Emily was steady, reliable, the kind of person you didn't worry about because she always had everything under control. Until now. Back at the precinct, Emily closed her eyes and let her mind drift to a different time. A different uniform. She'd been 22 when she enlisted, fresh out of a state school with a nursing degree and no idea what to do with it. The recruiter had made it sound straightforward. Serve your country, get experience, pay off your loans. What he hadn't mentioned was the weight of a flak vest in 120-degree heat, the sound of an IED detonating close enough to feel in your teeth, the way blood looked when it pooled in desert sand. They'd sent her to Forward Operating Base Sentinel, 40 miles outside Kandahar. She'd worked in a field hospital that was really just a reinforced tent with cots and equipment held together by duct tape and hope. The cases came in waves: gunshot wounds, shrapnel injuries, burns, infections. She learned to operate on 2 hours of sleep, learned to triage without thinking, learned that sometimes the ones who screamed weren't the ones you worried about. It was the quiet ones who slipped away. She'd saved dozens, lost more than she wanted to count, and somewhere in the middle of her second tour, she'd stopped being the idealistic kid who thought she could fix everything. She became someone who just tried to stop the bleeding. After her third deployment, they'd offered her a promotion, a training position stateside, a chance to teach the next generation of combat medics. She'd turned it down and walked away. Because some things you can't teach, and some things you can't keep doing. The door opened again. This time it was Toller. He had a folder in one hand and a styrofoam cup in the other. He set the cup down in front of her, water, not coffee, and flipped the folder open. Emily Ann Carter, he read aloud. Registered nurse. Been at Silverline for 4 years. Clean record. No priors, no outstanding warrants. Not even a parking ticket. Emily said nothing. Toller looked up. So why'd you run? I didn't run. You took off the second you saw the lights. I pulled over. You saw me pull over. Yeah, after 2 blocks. I was looking for a safe place to stop. It was a busy street. There were pedestrians. Toller leaned back, studying her. You're awful calm for someone who just got hauled in. What would you like me to do? Cry? Beg? Most people would. I'm not most people. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. No, I don't think you are. He tapped the folder. Says here you worked at County General before Silverline. Before that, nothing. No employment history. Just a gap. Emily's expression didn't change. I was in the military. Doing what? Medic. Toller's eyebrows went up slightly. Army? Yes. How long? 6 years. See any action? Emily met his gaze. Enough. He waited for her to elaborate. She didn't. Huh. Toller closed the folder. Well, that's interesting, but it doesn't change why you're here. Which is? You match the description. You were in the area, and until we clear you, you stay. Even though you know I'm not who you're looking for. We don't know that yet. Yes, you do. Emily leaned forward slightly. The cuffs clinked against the table. You ran my plates. You called my employer. You checked my record. I'm exactly who I say I am. You just don't want to admit you made a mistake. Toller's smile faded. Careful. Or what? You'll arrest me? You already did. He stood abruptly, chair scraping loud against the floor. You've got an attitude problem, you know that? And you've got a badge that doesn't make you right. For a moment, she thought he might actually lose his temper, but he just grabbed the folder and walked out, slamming the door behind him. Emily sat back, pulse hammering. That had been stupid, reckless, the kind of thing that got you nowhere except deeper in the hole, but she was so tired of swallowing it. By 7 p.m., the precinct had shifted into night mode. Fewer people, dimmer lights, the energy slower, heavier. Emily watched through the small window as officers changed shifts, new faces replacing old ones. None of them looked her way. She thought about her apartment, the groceries in her trunk, milk, eggs, bread, probably spoiling by now, the plants on her windowsill that needed watering, the quiet, predictable routine she'd built for herself. All of it felt very far away. Her stomach growled. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Breakfast, maybe. A protein bar on the way out the door. She wondered if they'd feed her, wondered if they even cared. The door opened. Not Monroe, not taller. A woman this time, mid-50s, gray hair pulled back, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a suit, not a uniform. Emily recognized the look. Internal affairs, maybe. Or legal. Ms. Carter, the woman said, her voice clipped and professional. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Brennan. I've been reviewing your case. Emily straightened slightly. And? Brennan sat down across from her, hands folded on the table. No folder, no notes, just those sharp eyes, watching. You were stopped because you matched the description of a suspect in an armed robbery. The officers acted on probable cause. The officers acted on assumptions. Perhaps. Brennan's expression didn't change. But the fact remains, you were in the area. You were driving a similar vehicle. And you didn't stop immediately. I stopped as soon as it was safe. That's your version. Emily's jaw tightened. It's the truth. Brennan studied her for a long moment. Then she opened a slim tablet, swiped through a few screens, and turned it around. This is the suspect we're looking for. Emily looked down. The woman in the photo was white, yes. Dark jacket, yes. Driving a sedan, yes. But that was where the similarities ended. The suspect had blonde hair, not brown. She was taller, heavier, different face shape, different everything. This doesn't look anything like me, Emily said quietly. No, Brennan agreed. It doesn't. Silence settled between them. So why am I still here? Brennan powered off the tablet. Because mistakes take time to undo, and because this department doesn't like admitting them. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. Brennan's lips pressed into a thin line. I'm working on getting you released, but until the paperwork clears and the right people sign off, you're stuck. How long? I don't know. That's not good enough. It's all I have. Brennan stood, smoothing her jacket. For what it's worth, I believe you. I think this stop was sloppy, and you got caught in the middle of it, but belief doesn't override procedure. Then what does? Brennan paused at the door. Evidence, or a really good lawyer. She walked out. Emily sat there staring at the empty chair across from her. Evidence, procedure, protocol. None of it mattered when the people in charge had already made up their minds. Another hour crawled by, then another. Emily's thoughts began to fracture. Not from fear, she'd been through worse, but from the sheer weight of inaction. She was used to moving, to doing, to having control over her environment. Sitting here, powerless, was its own kind of torture. She thought about the patient she was supposed to be seeing right now. Mr. Kovac in bed 7, post-op hip replacement, probably confused and asking for her. The teenager in bed 3 with the broken arm, scared of needles. The elderly woman in bed 11 who only spoke Spanish and trusted Emily because she'd taken the time to learn enough to comfort her. They were counting on her. And she was stuck in a room with cinder block walls and a clock that ticked too loud. At 8:30, the door opened again. Monroe. He looked tired, irritated, like he'd been dealing with something he didn't want to deal with. Still here? Emily asked. He ignored the jab. We've been trying to reach your supervisor at Silverline. Line's been busy. It's a hospital. Lines are always busy. Yeah, well, we need verification of your employment. You already verified it. Toller told me. Monroe's eyes narrowed. We need it in writing. Then send someone to the hospital. It's 20 minutes away. We're not errand boys. Emily almost laughed. No, you're just the people who arrested the wrong person and won't admit it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. And so do you. Monroe stepped closer, leaning both hands on the table. You think you're smart, don't you? You think because you've got a clean record and a nursing license, that makes you untouchable. I think I've done nothing wrong and you know it. What I know, Monroe said slowly, is that you've got an attitude, and that makes me wonder what you're trying to hide. Emily held his gaze. I'm not hiding anything. You're just looking for an excuse to keep me here because letting me go means admitting you screwed up. His jaw clenched. For a second, she thought he might actually snap, but he just pushed off the table and walked out, muttering something under his breath. The door slammed. Emily let out a slow breath. Her hands were shaking now, just slightly. Adrenaline. She clenched them into fists, willing the tremor to stop. She couldn't afford to lose control. Not here, not now. At Silverline, Rita finally got through to the precinct. This is Charge Nurse Delgado at Silverline Medical Center, she said, voice tight with frustration. I'm calling about one of my nurses, Emily Carter. She didn't show up for her shift and she's not answering her phone. Do you have any information? There was a pause. Muffled voices. Then a different voice came on the line. This is Officer Toller. Can you verify Ms. Carter's employment? Rita blinked. What? We need confirmation that Emily Carter works at your facility. Why? What's going on? Just answer the question, ma'am. Rita's stomach dropped. Yes. She works here. She's one of our RNs, has been for 4 years. Is she okay? She's fine. We just needed to confirm. The line went dead. Rita stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, heart pounding. Emily was at the police station. Why the hell was Emily at the police station? Shots. Emily didn't know how much time had passed when the lights in the precinct suddenly changed. Brighter. More urgent. She heard running footsteps, raised voices, radios crackling with sharp clipped transmissions. Something was happening. She stood pressing close to the small window in the door. Officers were moving fast, clustering near the front desk. Someone shouted for an AED. Someone else yelled about calling an ambulance. And then she saw him. Officer Danny Ramirez, mid-30s, compact build, slumped in a chair near the dispatch desk. His face was pale, slick with sweat. His breathing was shallow, labored. Another officer, young, panicking, was trying to prop him up. Danny, talk to me. Danny! Ramirez's eyes rolled back. He collapsed. The precinct exploded into chaos. Emily didn't think. She slammed her palm against the door once, twice, 3 times. Hey, hey! No one heard her. She kicked the door. Open the door! I can help! Still nothing. She kicked it again, harder, the sound echoing through the narrow hallway. Finally, Monroe appeared, face flushed, eyes wild. What? Let me out. I can help. Stay back. He's coding. You have maybe 90 seconds before brain damage sets in. Let me out or he dies. Monroe hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then he yanked the door open and unlocked the cuffs. Emily didn't wait. She pushed past him and sprinted toward the cluster of officers. Move! She barked. Her voice cut through the panic like a blade. All of you, step back, now! They obeyed, more from shock than anything else. Emily dropped to her knees beside Ramirez, fingers immediately going to his carotid. No pulse, skin cold and clammy, lips starting to turn blue. How long has he been down? She demanded. I don't know, maybe a minute. Maybe isn't good enough. Who saw him collapse? I did, stammered the young officer. Webb. He grabbed his chest and went down. Emily tilted Ramirez's head back, checked his airway, and positioned her hands over his sternum. She started compressions. Hard. Fast. 30 at a time. Perfect rhythm, the way she'd done 100 times in a tent half a world away. Someone get the AED, she snapped, and call the paramedics. Tell them we've got a cardiac arrest. Male, mid-30s, no pulse, CPR in progress. Toller scrambled for the defibrillator. Monroe grabbed the phone. Emily didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't look up. Her entire world narrowed to the man in front of her, to the rhythm, to the count. 1, 2, 3, 4. She could feel ribs flexing under her palms, could hear the small, wet sounds of air being forced in and out of his lungs. 26, 27, 28. Come on, Danny, she muttered. Don't quit on me. Don't you dare quit. 30 compressions. She tilted his head back, pinched his nose, and gave 2 breaths, watched his chest rise and fall, then back to compressions. Toller returned, hands shaking as he fumbled with the AED case. Emily didn't wait for him to figure it out. She grabbed the device, ripped open Ramirez's shirt, and slapped the pads onto his chest, analyzing rhythm. Do not touch the patient. Everyone froze. The machine beeped. Once, twice. Shock advised. Emily pulled back, glanced around to make sure no one was touching him, and pressed the button. Ramirez's body jerked, back arching off the floor. Emily checked his pulse. Nothing. She went back to compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. The room was silent, except for the sound of her counting under her breath. Every officer in the precinct stood frozen, watching this woman, this suspect, fight to save one of their own. 28, 29, 30. 2 more breaths. Back to compressions. And then Ramirez gasped. His eyes fluttered open. He coughed, chest heaving, and his hand shot out, grabbing Emily's wrist. Easy, Emily said, her voice suddenly gentle. You're okay. Just breathe. In and out. That's it. Ramirez's eyes focused on her, confused, terrified. What happened? Your heart stopped. You're back now. Paramedics are on the way. She kept one hand on his shoulder, steady and grounding. Stay with me, Danny. Don't try to move. He nodded weakly, still gripping her wrist like a lifeline. Emily glanced up at the officers surrounding them. Their faces were pale, stricken. Some looked like they might be sick. Monroe stood at the back, phone still in his hand, staring at her like he'd never seen her before. And then the radio on his belt crackled. Unit 12 to dispatch. We've got the suspect in custody. Repeat. Armed robbery suspect apprehended. Female, Caucasian, dark jacket. Detained at the corner of Maple and 5th. The voice kept talking, giving details, confirming the arrest. But no one in that room was listening, because they were all staring at Emily. The woman they'd handcuffed. Interrogated. Dismissed. The woman who just saved Danny Ramirez's life. Toller was the first to speak. His voice came out rough, unsteady. You're not... No, Emily said quietly, still kneeling beside Ramirez. I'm not. Monroe's face went from pale to gray. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. The precinct doors burst open. Paramedics rushed in, equipment clattering, voices calling out questions. Emily stepped back, giving them space, but she didn't leave. She stayed close, rattling off vitals, timeline, interventions, everything they needed to know in clear, clinical sentences. The lead paramedic, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and steady hands, looked at Emily with something close to respect. You the one who ran the code? Yes. Nice work. He'd be gone without you. They loaded Ramirez onto a gurney. He was conscious now, groggy but stable. As they wheeled him past, he caught Emily's eye. Thank you, he rasped. Emily nodded, didn't smile, just watched as they took him out into the night, sirens wailing as the ambulance pulled away. And then she turned back to the room full of officers. No one moved. Lieutenant Brennan appeared from somewhere in the back, tablet in hand, face unreadable. She walked up to Monroe and said something quiet. He flinched, nodded. Then Brennan turned to Emily. Ms. Carter, if you'll come with me. Emily followed her back to the interrogation room. But this time, Brennan didn't sit across from her. She stood by the door, arms crossed. The suspect was apprehended 20 minutes ago, Brennan said. Positive ID. She confessed to the robbery. You're clear. Emily said nothing. I'm authorizing your immediate release. Your personal effects will be returned. You're free to go. Just like that. Brennan's jaw tightened. Just like that. No apology? No explanation? You'll receive a formal apology from the department within 48 hours, along with documentation clearing your name. That's not the same thing. No, Brennan agreed quietly. It's not. She paused. For what it's worth, you saved a good man's life tonight. That counts for something. It shouldn't have to. Brennan didn't argue. She just opened the door and gestured for Emily to follow. They walked through the precinct in silence. Officers stepped aside as they passed. Some looked embarrassed, some looked away. Monroe was nowhere to be seen. At the front desk, a clerk handed Emily a plastic bag with her phone, wallet, and keys. Emily signed the release form without reading it and walked toward the exit. She was almost out the door when she heard footsteps behind her. Ms. Carter. She turned. It was Toller. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. I just, I wanted to say, he trailed off, struggling. We were wrong. I was wrong. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Yes, you were. She walked out into the night. The air was cool, crisp. The city hummed around her, cars passing, distant sirens, the low murmur of people living their lives. Emily stood on the precinct steps, breathing it in. Her hands were still shaking. She looked down at them, at the faint red marks on her wrists where the cuffs had been, at the faint tremor she couldn't quite stop. And then she walked to her car, got in, and sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed, 12 missed calls, 8 voicemails, 23 texts, most of them from Rita. Emily didn't open them, not yet. She just sat there, feeling the weight of the last 6 hours settle over her like a blanket. They'd arrested her, cuffed her, dismissed her, held her for hours. And the only reason they'd let her go was because she'd saved one of them. Not because it was the right thing to do. Not because they'd realized their mistake. Because she'd proven herself useful. Emily closed her eyes. Somewhere in the distance, another siren wailed. And in the precinct behind her, officers were already trying to figure out how to spin this, how to make it go away. But Emily knew one thing for certain. It wasn't going away. Not this time. Emily turned the key. The engine coughed to life, and she pulled out of the precinct parking lot without looking back. The streets were quieter now, the evening rush long over, replaced by the scattered glow of streetlights and the occasional late-night driver. She drove on autopilot, hands steady on the wheel, mind somewhere else entirely. By the time she reached her apartment building, it was nearly 11. She parked in her usual spot, grabbed the plastic bag with her belongings, and walked up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again. Her legs felt heavy. Everything felt heavy. Inside, the apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Clean, sparse. A couch, a small dining table, a kitchen she barely used. No photos on the walls, no personal touches, just functional space where she slept and occasionally ate. Emily dropped her keys on the counter and stood there, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed again. She finally looked at it. 17 missed calls from Rita, 4 from Kyle, 3 from numbers she didn't recognize, and 1 text from Rita, sent 20 minutes ago. Call me, now. Emily dialed. Rita picked up on the first ring. Where the hell have you been? It's complicated. Complicated? Emily, you missed your entire shift. No call, no text, nothing. I had patients asking for you. I had doctors asking for you. I didn't know if you were dead in a ditch somewhere. I'm sorry. Sorry? That's it? Rita's voice cracked slightly. I called the police. They told me you were there, at the station. What happened? Emily sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. They arrested me. Silence. They what? Wrong place, wrong time. They thought I was someone else. Jesus Christ. Rita's breath hitched. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. Emily closed her eyes. I'm fine, Rita. They let me go. It's over. It's not over. You were arrested. Wrongfully. You need to file a complaint. You need to... I know. Do you? Because you sound like you're just going to let this go. I'm not letting anything go. Emily's voice came out sharper than she intended. I'm just tired. Rita went quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her tone had softened. Come in tomorrow. We'll talk. And take the next 2 days off. You need it. I don't need... It wasn't a request. Emily almost smiled. Almost. Okay. And Emily? I'm glad you're okay. Thanks. She hung up and sat there in the dark, phone still in her hand. The apartment was too quiet. She could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a TV through the walls, her own breathing. She thought about Ramirez, about the way his hand had gripped her wrist, the way his eyes had found hers in that moment between life and death. She thought about Monroe's face when the radio call came through. She thought about all of it. And then she got up, walked to the bathroom, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection stared back, same face, same eyes, but something in them had shifted. Something she hadn't seen in a long time. Anger, not the hot, reckless kind. The cold, focused kind. The kind that didn't fade. She washed her face, changed into sleep clothes, and climbed into bed. But sleep didn't come. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last 6 hours. The way Monroe had dismissed her, the way Toller had smirked, the way they'd all looked at her like she was disposable. Until she wasn't. Until they needed her. Her phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Ms. Carter? A man's voice. Professional, unfamiliar. Who is this? My name is David Holloway. I'm an attorney with Brenner and Associates. I specialize in civil rights cases. Emily sat up. How did you get my number? It's a small city. Word travels fast, especially when it involves wrongful arrests. He paused. I'd like to talk to you about what happened tonight. I'm not interested. You should be. What they did to you was illegal. You have grounds for a lawsuit. I'm sure I do. But I'm not looking to sue anyone. Why not? Because I don't want to spend the next 2 years of my life in court fighting people who will never admit they were wrong. Holloway didn't miss a beat. What if I told you there's another way? A way that doesn't take 2 years and doesn't require you to fight alone? Emily hesitated. I'm listening. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., coffee shop on 8th and Laurel. Just a conversation. No commitment. I don't know. Ms. Carter, they arrested you. They held you for hours. They ignored every piece of evidence that proved your innocence. And the only reason they let you go was because you saved one of their own. His voice sharpened. Do you really think you're the first person this has happened to? Or that you'll be the last? The words hit harder than she expected. 10 a.m., Holloway repeated. Just hear me out. Emily stared at the wall. Fine. 10 a.m. She hung up before he could say anything else. For a long time, she just sat there, phone in her lap, mind racing. She didn't want to be that person, the one who made everything into a battle, the one who couldn't let things go. But she also couldn't shake the image of Monroe's face, the dismissiveness, the certainty that he was right and she was nothing. Maybe Holloway was right. Maybe this wasn't just about her. Man. The next morning, Emily woke to sunlight streaming through her blinds and her phone ringing. She fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Rita again. Yeah? Turn on the news. What? Channel 7, now. Emily stumbled to the living room and grabbed the remote. The TV flickered to life, and there it was. A reporter standing outside the precinct, microphone in hand, looking directly into the camera. Behind her, the building looked the same as it had last night, unassuming, bureaucratic, ordinary. But the headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen was anything but. Nurse wrongfully arrested saves officer's life. Emily's stomach dropped. According to sources inside the department, Emily Carter, a registered nurse at Silverline Medical Center, was detained for nearly 6 hours on suspicion of armed robbery. However, the real suspect was apprehended during Ms. Carter's detention. Despite this, she was not immediately released. Instead, she remained in custody until a medical emergency occurred within the precinct itself. The screen cut to shaky cell phone footage. Someone had filmed the aftermath. Emily could see herself kneeling beside Ramirez, hands moving in sharp, controlled motions. The timestamp said 9:17 p.m. Witnesses say Ms. Carter, despite being wrongfully detained, performed CPR and used an AED to save Officer Daniel Ramirez's life. The department has yet to issue a formal statement, but sources confirm that Ms. Carter has been fully cleared of any wrongdoing. The reporter's voice grew sharper. This raises serious questions about the protocols used during the arrest and whether implicit bias played a role in the prolonged detention. We reached out to the police chief for comment, but have not yet received a response. The screen cut back to the studio. The anchor, a woman in her 50s with perfectly styled hair, shook her head slowly. An incredible story. We'll continue to follow this as it develops. Emily muted the TV and stood there, frozen. Emily? Rita's voice came through the phone, still pressed to her ear. You there? Yeah, this is big. I know. People are going to want to talk to you. Reporters, lawyers, everyone. I know. What are you going to do? Emily looked at the screen, at the frozen image of herself kneeling on the precinct floor, fighting to save a man who'd helped arrest her. I don't know yet. But that wasn't entirely true. She ended the call and checked the time. 9:45. 15 minutes until her meeting with Holloway. She got dressed quickly. Jeans, plain shirt, jacket, pulled her hair back. No makeup. No effort to look like anything other than what she was. The coffee shop on 8th and Laurel was a local spot, the kind with mismatched furniture and baristas who remembered your order. Emily walked in at exactly 10 a.m. and spotted Holloway immediately. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, sharp suit, but not flashy. He sat in the back corner, a leather folio on the table in front of him. He stood when she approached. Miss Carter, thanks for coming. She didn't shake his hand, just sat down across from him. Let's make this quick. Holloway smiled slightly. Fair enough? He slid a business card across the table. I've been practicing civil rights law for 20 years. I've handled cases like yours before. Wrongful arrest, excessive detention, violation of due process. I haven't decided if I want to pursue anything. I know, but you should hear your options. He opened the folio and pulled out a printed document. This is a summary of your case, the timeline or evidence, witness statements. I've already started building it. Emily glanced at the pages, but didn't touch them. How did you get all this? Public records, news reports, and a few contacts inside the department who think what happened to you was wrong. Contacts. People who don't like seeing the system abused. He leaned forward slightly. Look, I'm not going to pressure you, but you should know this doesn't end with you. There have been 3 other wrongful arrests in this city in the last 18 months. Different people, different circumstances, same department. Emily's eyes narrowed. 3? 3 that we know of. One was a college student, another was a delivery driver. The third was a veteran. He tapped the document. All of them were held longer than necessary. All of them were cleared. None of them got apologies. None of them got justice. What happened to them? The student dropped out, couldn't handle the scrutiny. The delivery driver moved to another state, and the veteran, Holloway's expression darkened. He's still fighting. 2 years later, still fighting. Emily felt something cold settle in her chest. Why are you telling me this? Because you're different. You didn't just survive what they did to you. You saved one of them. That changes the narrative. It gives you leverage. I don't want leverage. I want to move on. I understand that, but moving on doesn't mean letting them get away with it. He closed the folio. Think about it. If you change your mind, call me. If not, I wish you the best. He stood, left a 20 on the table for the coffee he'd ordered, and walked out. Emily sat there for a long time, staring at the business card. David Holloway, Brenner and Associates, civil rights attorney. She picked it up, turned it over, put it in her pocket. Then she left. By the time Emily got back to her apartment, her phone had 17 new messages. Most were from reporters asking for interviews. 2 were from advocacy groups offering support. 1 was from a producer at a national news network. She deleted all of them. But there was one message she couldn't ignore. From Lieutenant Brennan. We need to talk. Not official, just you and me. Can you come by? Emily stared at it for a full minute before responding. When? The reply came immediately. Now, if possible. Emily grabbed her jacket and keys. 20 minutes later, she was back at the precinct. But this time, she walked through the front door with her head up. No cuffs. No fear. The desk sergeant looked up, recognized her, and his face went pale. Ms. Carter? I'm here to see Lieutenant Brennan. Of course, I'll let her know. He picked up the phone, fumbling slightly. Emily waited, hands in her pockets, expression neutral. A few officers passed by. Some glanced at her, some looked away. None of them spoke. Brennan appeared a moment later dressed in plain clothes, slacks, blouse, no badge visible. She looked tired, older than she had last night. Thanks for coming, Brennan said quietly. Let's talk outside. They walked out to the parking lot, away from the building, away from the cameras. Brennan stopped near a bench and leaned against it, arms crossed. I saw the news, she said. So did everyone else. Yeah, me say. Brennan looked at her. How are you holding up? I'm fine. That's the second time you've told me that. I didn't believe it the first time either. Emily almost smiled. Almost. What do you want, Lieutenant? Brennan hesitated, then pulled out a folded piece of paper from her pocket. This is the department's official apology. It'll be released to the press this afternoon. Emily took it, scanned the text. Standard corporate language, regret for the inconvenience, commitment to reviewing procedures, grateful for her service. Nothing about the 6 hours. Nothing about Monroe or Toller. Nothing that mattered. This is garbage, Emily said flatly. I know. Then why give it to me? Because I wanted you to see it before everyone else does. And because I wanted to tell you off the record that some of us know this doesn't cut it. Emily looked at her. Some of you. The ones who actually give a damn. Brennan straightened. Look, I can't speak for the whole department. I can't undo what happened. But I can tell you that Monroe and Toller are being reviewed. Internally. It won't be public, and it won't be fast, but it's happening. Reviewed. not suspended, not fired. It's a process. It's a cover-up. Brennan didn't argue. Maybe, but it's the best I can do from where I stand. Emily folded the apology and handed it back. Keep it. Emily, I don't want their apology. I don't want their review. I want them to do better, and I don't think they will. She started to walk away. Wait. Brennan's voice stopped her. If you decide to take this further, legally, I mean, I'll help. I can't do it publicly, but I'll give you everything I have. Documents, records, whatever you need. Emily turned back. Why? Because what happened to you was wrong, and because I'm tired of watching this department protect people who don't deserve it. For the first time since last night, Emily felt something shift. Not relief, not vindication, just recognition that she wasn't alone in this. I'll think about it, Emily said. Brennan nodded. That's all I'm asking. Emily drove to Silverline. She wasn't scheduled to work, but she needed to see Rita, needed to ground herself in something familiar. The hospital was its usual controlled chaos, patients in the waiting room, nurses moving between stations, doctors shouting orders. Emily walked through it all like a ghost, invisible until she reached the nurses' station. Rita looked up from a chart and immediately came around the desk. You look like hell. Thanks. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept? I don't know. Yesterday? Rita steered her toward the break room and shut the door. Sit. Emily sat. Rita poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one over. Talk. So Emily did. She told her about Holloway, about Brennan, about the apology that wasn't really an apology, about all of it. Rita listened without interrupting. When Emily finished, she set down her cup and leaned back. You're going to sue them, aren't you? I don't know. Yes, you do. You just don't want to admit it yet. Emily looked at her. What would you do? Me? I'd burn the whole place down. Rita's expression was fierce. But I'm not you. You're careful. You think things through. You don't act on impulse. Maybe I should. Maybe. Rita reached across and squeezed her hand. Whatever you decide, I've got your back. We all do. Emily felt her throat tighten. She didn't cry. She never cried. But it was close. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. You're covering my shift next month. That actually got a smile. But over the next 3 days, the story grew legs. Local news became regional news. Regional became national. Emily's name was everywhere. Her face was everywhere. People she'd never met were debating her case on talk shows, in op-eds, on social media. Some called her a hero. Some questioned why she'd helped the very people who'd wronged her. Some turned it into a political talking point. Emily ignored most of it, but she couldn't ignore the calls from the department. They wanted to honor her, a commendation ceremony, a public acknowledgement of her actions. She declined. Then they offered a settlement, a sum of money in exchange for signing an NDA and agreeing not to pursue legal action. She declined that too. On the 4th day, she called Holloway. I'm in, she said. There was a pause. Then, you're sure? Yes. Okay, let's do this right. They met the next morning. This time, not at a coffee shop. At his office, a modest space in a building downtown, walls lined with case files and legal texts. Holloway's paralegal, a sharp-eyed woman named Monica, joined them. For 2 hours, they went over everything. Timeline, evidence, witness statements. Emily answered every question, relived every moment, until her voice was hoarse and her hands were shaking. When they finished, Holloway leaned back. This is solid. We've got wrongful arrest, violation of civil rights, potentially negligence. What's the next step? We file. Publicly. Make it impossible for them to bury. Emily nodded. Do it. Monica looked up from her notes. You should know, this is going to get ugly. They'll dig into your past. They'll try to discredit you. Let them. I'm serious. They'll look for anything. Military records, medical history, personal relationships. Anything they can use. Emily met her gaze. I've got nothing to hide? Holloway and Monica exchanged a glance. All right, Holloway said. We'll file tomorrow. The lawsuit hit the news like a bomb. Within hours, the department issued a statement denying any wrongdoing and pledging to defend against the baseless allegations. The police union released their own statement, calling Emily's claims an attack on law enforcement. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Emily's social media, which she barely used, was flooded with messages. Some supportive, many not. You're just looking for a payday. Ungrateful. They let you go and you sue them? Another person trying to destroy good cops. She stopped reading after the first dozen. But the support was there too. Strangers who sent messages of encouragement, advocacy groups who reached out to offer resources, other victims of wrongful arrests who shared their stories. Rita called every day. You doing okay? I'm fine. Stop saying that. What do you want me to say? The truth. Emily sat on her couch, staring at the wall. I'm angry, and I'm scared, and I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. That's better. Rita's voice softened. For what it's worth, I think you are. Yeah? Yeah. 2 weeks after filing the lawsuit, Emily was leaving the hospital after a late shift when she noticed the car. Black sedan, tinted windows. Parked across the street, engine running. She'd seen it 3 times in the last week. Different locations, same car. Emily kept walking, but her pulse kicked up. She pulled out her phone and texted Holloway. I think I'm being followed. His response came fast. Where are you? Hospital parking lot. Get inside, now. I'm calling someone. Emily turned and walked back toward the hospital entrance. The sedan's engine revved. For a second, she thought it might actually come after her, but it just sat there, idling. She made it inside and waited near the security desk, heart pounding. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up, but not from the precinct that had arrested her. Different jurisdiction, different officers. One of them came inside, a woman, maybe 30, with kind eyes. Miss Carter? That's me. I'm Officer Lisa Tran, your attorney called. Said you felt unsafe. Emily explained. The car, the pattern, the timing. Tran listened, took notes, and radioed her partner. We'll do a sweep, see if we can find the vehicle. Thank you. Tran hesitated. For what it's worth, a lot of us think what happened to you was wrong. Emily looked at her. You're the first officer to say that to my face. Won't be the last. Tran left. Emily waited another hour before heading home, checking over her shoulder the entire way. The black sedan was gone, but the message was clear. Someone wanted her to know they were watching. But that night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. Who was following her? The department? Someone with a grudge? Or just paranoia taking root? She didn't know. What she did know was that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Drop the lawsuit. Last warning. Emily stared at the screen, blood turning to ice. Then she screenshotted it and sent it to Holloway. His response? File a police report. Now. She did. Different precinct, different officers. They took her statement, logged the threat, and promised to investigate. But Emily knew how these things went. Promises didn't mean much. She went home, locked every door, checked every window. And she didn't sleep. Because somewhere out there, someone was watching. And they wanted her to be afraid. But fear was something Emily had learned to live with a long time ago. In a tent hospital half a world away, she'd learned that fear didn't stop you. It just showed you what mattered. And what mattered now was making sure this never happened to anyone else. So she sat in the dark, phone in hand, waiting for the sun to rise. Waiting for the next move, because she knew it was coming. The sun broke through her blinds at 6 a.m., harsh and unforgiving. Emily hadn't slept. She'd sat in the dark for hours, listening to every creak of the building, every footstep in the hallway, every car engine on the street below. Her phone remained in her hand, screen dimmed but never off. She showered, dressed, made coffee she didn't drink. By 7:30, she was at Holloway's office, the threatening text already forwarded to him along with the police report number. Holloway was waiting, door unlocked, looking like he hadn't slept much either. Monica was already at her desk, typing rapidly. They're escalating, Holloway said without preamble. That text, the surveillance, they want you rattled. I know what they want. Are you rattled? Emily met his eyes. No. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good, because it's about to get worse. He pulled up something on his laptop and turned the screen toward her. The department filed a motion to dismiss. Claims qualified immunity, says the officers acted in good faith based on available information. That's bullshit. Of course it is, but it's also standard procedure. He scrolled down. They're also claiming you're seeking publicity and financial gain, that your actions after the arrest, specifically saving Ramirez, were calculated to build a case. Emily felt her jaw clench. They're saying I let him code on purpose? They're implying it, carefully, just enough to plant doubt. Monica looked up from her keyboard. It gets better. They're subpoenaing your military records. Full psychiatric evaluations, deployment history, everything. They can't. They can, and they will. If there's anything in there that suggests instability, trauma response, anything they can spin, there isn't. Emily's voice was flat. I was cleared for duty. I completed my service honorably. There's nothing. You sure about that? Holloway asked gently. No PTSD diagnosis, no counseling sessions, no incidents that got documented? Emily thought back to the debriefings after her second tour, to the mandatory psych eval after a particularly bad week when they'd lost 4 soldiers in 72 hours, to the nightmares she'd never reported because reporting them meant getting pulled from active duty. Nothing official, she said carefully. Holloway caught the hesitation. What about unofficial? I saw a chaplain a few times, talked through some things, but it wasn't documented as medical treatment. Are you certain? As certain as I can be. He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. All right, we'll deal with whatever comes. In the meantime, we need to file our response to their motion, and we need to go on the offensive. Meaning? Meaning we don't just defend. We attack. We find every other case like yours in this department's history. We find patterns. We find witnesses who'll testify that this isn't an isolated incident. Monica handed Emily a thick folder. I've already started. 3 cases in 18 months. 2 more if we go back 3 years. All wrongful detentions. All involving similar circumstances. Officers acting on partial information, ignoring contradictory evidence, holding people past reasonable suspicion. Emily flipped through the files. Names, photos, incident reports. Each one a life disrupted. Each one a person who'd been exactly where she was now. What happened to them? 1 settled quietly, 2 are still pending, the others dropped their cases. Monica's expression was grim. Most people can't handle the pressure, the media attention, the threats. They just want it to go away. I'm not most people. No, Holloway said quietly. You're not. Which is why they're going to come at you harder than they did the others. But by midday, the department's response had leaked to the press. Emily's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts. Social media mentions. Messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know if she was okay, if the allegations were true, if she really was just doing this for money. She turned off her phone and went to work. Silverline was slammed. A multi-car pileup on the interstate had sent a dozen patients to the ER, and they were still processing them when Emily arrived. Rita took one look at her and pointed to Bay 6. GSW to the shoulder. Stable, but needs monitoring. You good? I'm good. She wasn't. But she could fake it. The patient was a kid, maybe 19, with a gunshot wound that had miraculously missed everything vital. He was high on painkillers and talking too much, rambling about his friends, his girlfriend, how stupid he'd been to get involved in whatever situation had put him here. Emily let him talk, checked his vitals, adjusted his IV, kept her hands busy, and her mind focused on something that wasn't lawsuits or threats or surveillance. You're that nurse, the kid said suddenly. Emily looked up. What? From the news. The one who got arrested. His eyes were glassy but earnest. That was messed up what they did. Don't worry about it. No, seriously. My cousin got pulled over last year for no reason. They searched his car, kept him on the side of the road for like 2 hours. Didn't find anything because there wasn't anything to find. He shifted, wincing. Cops just do whatever they want, you know? Emily didn't respond, just made a note on his chart. You're suing them, right? That's not something I can talk about. Good. You should. Someone needs to. She finished her notes and left before he could say anything else. In the hallway, she nearly collided with Kyle. He steadied her with one hand. Whoa. You okay? Fine. You keep saying that. Because I keep being fine. He didn't buy it. Rita told me what's going on. The lawsuit, the threats, all of it. She shouldn't have. Probably not, but I'm glad she did. He lowered his voice. Look, if you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. I don't care what time it is. Emily felt something catch in her throat. She swallowed it down. Thanks. I'm serious. I know. He squeezed her shoulder once and walked away. The shift ended at 11. Emily changed out of her scrubs, grabbed her bag, and headed for the parking lot. The night air was cool, almost cold, and the lot was mostly empty. She scanned for the black sedan. Didn't see it. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. She made it halfway to her car when she heard footsteps behind her. Fast, purposeful. Emily spun, hand already reaching for the pepper spray on her keychain. It was Monroe. He stopped a few feet away, hands raised in a gesture that was probably meant to be placating, but just looked defensive. Easy. I just want to talk. Get away from me. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I don't owe you 5 seconds. She turned and kept walking. He followed. I know you're pissed. I get it. But you need to hear me out. Emily stopped, turned. What could you possibly have to say that I'd want to hear? Monroe looked older in the dim light. Tired. Maybe even a little desperate. I made a mistake. I know that. I should have listened to you. Should have checked harder. I didn't. Is that an apology? It's the truth. An apology would start with, I'm sorry. He flinched. I'm sorry. For what, specifically? For arresting you, for holding you, for not believing you when you told me who you were. Emily stared at him. You're only sorry because it blew up in your face. If I hadn't saved Ramirez, if the media hadn't picked it up, you wouldn't give a damn. That's not... Yes, it is. She stepped closer. You looked at me and you saw someone disposable. Someone who didn't matter. And the only reason you're here now is because I became inconvenient. Monroe's hands dropped. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I want you to leave. The lawsuit is happening, with or without your input. It's going to destroy careers. Good people don't arrest innocent civilians and hold them for 6 hours. Emily's voice was cold now, hard. Good people don't ignore evidence because it's easier to be wrong than to admit they made a mistake. Ramirez could have died, and whose fault would that have been? She let the question hang. I saved his life despite what you did to me. Not because of it. Don't you dare try to use that as leverage. Monroe's face went red. I came here to make this right. You can't. It's too late for that. She turned and walked to her car. This time, he didn't follow. Emily drove home on autopilot, hands shaking on the wheel. She'd confronted him, finally said everything she'd been holding back, and it should have felt good. It didn't. It just felt hollow. Inside her apartment, she locked the door, checked the windows, and collapsed on the couch. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it, buzzed again and again. Finally, she looked. Holloway. Motion hearing set for next week. Need to prep. Rita. You okay? Heard Monroe showed up at the hospital. Unknown number? You made a mistake. Emily stared at the last message. Different number than before, same intent. She took a screenshot, sent it to Holloway, and filed another police report. Then she sat in the dark and tried to breathe. Yet, the motion hearing was in a downtown courthouse, a brutalist concrete building that looked more like a prison than a place of justice. Emily arrived with Holloway and Monica, all 3 of them dressed professionally. Emily in a simple black suit she'd bought specifically for this. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, rows of benches, a judge's bench that loomed over everything. The department's lawyers were already there, 3 of them, expensive suits, leather briefcases, expressions that suggested they did this every day and won. The lead attorney was a woman named Sandra Voss. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, reputation for being ruthless. She glanced at Emily once, dismissed her, and turned back to her notes. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Judge Margaret Calloway, 60s, gray hair, no-nonsense demeanor. She sat, gestured for everyone else to do the same, and opened the file in front of her. Let's get started. Ms. Voss, you filed a motion to dismiss based on qualified immunity. Make your case. Voss stood. Thank you, Your Honor. The facts are straightforward. My clients acted on credible information regarding a suspect matching Miss Carter's description. They followed standard procedure in detaining her. When additional information became available, she was released. At no point did they act with malice or violate established protocol. Ms. Carter was held for 6 hours, Holloway interjected. Counsel will wait his turn, Calloway said sharply. Voss continued. The delay in release was due to processing time and verification of identity, which is standard in cases involving serious crimes. Furthermore, Ms. Carter's own actions during detention, specifically her medical intervention, demonstrate that she was treated fairly and given opportunity to assist when needed. Emily felt her blood pressure spike. They were actually using the fact that she'd saved Ramirez as proof that she'd been treated well. Holloway stood when the judge gestured. Your Honor, the plaintiff was detained based on the flimsiest of descriptions. White female, dark jacket, same car model. No facial recognition, no verification of the actual suspect's other identifying features. The officers ignored Ms. Carter's identification, her employment verification, and her consistent statements of innocence. This wasn't standard procedure. This was negligence bordering on recklessness. The officers were acting on exigent circumstances, Voss countered. An armed robbery had just occurred. Time was of the essence. Then why, Holloway said calmly, did they continue to hold her after the actual suspect was apprehended? The radio call came through at 9:16 p.m. Ms. Carter wasn't released until after 10 p.m. What justified that additional hour? Voss hesitated, just for a second. Administrative processing. For an hour? Procedures take time. Judge Calloway leaned forward. Ms. Voss, I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Holloway on this point. If the actual suspect was in custody and identified, what reasonable justification existed for continued detention? Voss regrouped quickly. The officers needed to ensure Ms. Carter wasn't an accomplice. Multiple suspects are common in robbery cases. Based on what evidence? Holloway pressed. Based on the fact that she matched the description and was in the area. That's circular logic, Your Honor. She matched a vague description, therefore she was detained. She was detained, therefore she must be connected. There's no actual evidence supporting accomplice theory. Calloway made a note. I'll take that under advisement. Anything else, Ms. Voss? Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to introduce concerns about Ms. Carter's credibility, specifically her military background and potential trauma-related issues that may affect her perception of events. Emily went rigid. Holloway was on his feet instantly. Objection. That's character assassination, not legal argument. It's relevant to state of mind, Voss said smoothly. Ms. Carter's military service included deployment to combat zones. It's reasonable to question whether her interpretation of events was colored by prior trauma. Absolutely not, Calloway said, voice sharp. Unless you have specific documented evidence of mental impairment at the time of arrest, you will not speculate about Ms. Carter's mental state based on her honorable service to this country. Move on. Voss's jaw tightened. Understood, Your Honor. The hearing continued for another 40 minutes. Arguments, counter-arguments, citations of case law. Emily sat through it all, hands folded, expression neutral, while lawyers argued about her life like it was an abstract concept. Finally, Calloway closed her file. I'll issue a ruling within 10 business days. This hearing is adjourned. Everyone stood. The judge left. Emily exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. That went well, Holloway said quietly. Did it? Calloway shut down their mental health angle. That's huge. And she seemed skeptical about the qualified immunity claim. Seemed isn't good enough. It's what we've got. He packed his briefcase. Now we wait. Waiting was worse than the hearing. Emily went back to work, picked up extra shifts, stayed busy, anything to avoid sitting at home, staring at her phone, wondering if the threats would escalate. They did. A week after the hearing, someone slashed her tires. All four. She came out after a shift to find her car sitting on its rims, rubber shredded, a note tucked under the wiper. Final warning. She called the police. Different officers came. Different precinct. They took photos, filed a report, promised to increase patrols. Emily didn't believe them. She took an Uber home, filed another report with Holloway, and installed security cameras outside her apartment door. 2 days later, someone spray-painted her building. Not just random graffiti, targeted. Her apartment number. The word liar, in red letters 6 feet tall. The landlord was furious. Emily offered to pay for cleaning. He refused. This isn't your fault. Except it was, not morally, but practically. People were targeting her, and that made her a liability. Rita called that night. Move in with me. What? You heard me. I've got a spare room. You're not safe there. I'm not running. It's not running. It's being smart. Rita, Emily, listen to me. Whoever's doing this, they know where you live. They know where you work. They're escalating. You need to be somewhere they don't expect. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle it, but Rita was right. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. She packed a bag that night. Clothes, toiletries, the essentials. Left most of her stuff behind because this was temporary. It had to be temporary. Rita's apartment was across town, a 2-bedroom in a building with actual security. Emily moved in quietly, no announcement, no forwarding address. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then the ruling came down. Holloway called at 8 a.m. Calloway denied the motion to dismiss. Emily sat up in bed. What does that mean? It means the case moves forward. Discovery, depositions, trial if it gets that far. They'll appeal, probably, but for now, we won. His voice was cautious. This is good, Emily. This is really good. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the starting gun. The department appealed within 48 hours. The union issued a statement calling the ruling judicial overreach. The media coverage intensified. Emily's face was on every local channel, every news site, every social media feed. And then the doxing started. Someone posted her home address online, her phone number, her work schedule. Within hours, the harassment became a flood. Phone calls at all hours, emails full of threats and slurs, messages on social media so vile she stopped reading them. Holloway filed for a restraining order against anonymous parties. It did nothing. The hospital got calls. People demanding Emily be fired. People claiming she was a danger to patients. People who'd never met her but hated her anyway because she dared to challenge the system. Rita ran interference. Ignore them. They're cowards hiding behind keyboards. They know where I work. So? Hospital security knows who you are. We've got protocols. That's not enough. Then what do you want to do? Quit? Let them win? Emily didn't answer because she didn't know. The breaking point came on a Thursday. Emily was 3 hours into a shift when security called the nurses' station. Rita answered, listened, then went pale. Emily, security needs you at the front desk. Now. Emily's stomach dropped. Why? Just go. She went. At the front desk, 2 security guards stood with a man in his 50s. Thick build, red face, shouting about his rights, about being a taxpayer, about how people like Emily were destroying the country. Sir, you need to leave, one guard said. I'm not leaving until I talk to her. Sir, I said I'm not leaving. Emily stepped forward before she could stop herself. I'm Emily Carter. The man whirled. His eyes were bloodshot, wild. You're the one. I'm the one. And you need to leave. You think you're special? You think you can sue good cops and get away with it? I think you need to leave before I call the police. He laughed, harsh, bitter. Go ahead. Call them. See how much they care about you. The guards moved to either side of him. Sir, this is your last warning. I'm not done. They grabbed his arms. He struggled, still shouting, as they dragged him toward the exit. Emily watched, heart pounding, hands shaking. Kyle appeared at her elbow. You okay? No. Come on. Let's get you out of here. He led her to an empty exam room and shut the door. Emily sank onto the bed, head in her hands. This is getting out of control, Kyle said quietly. I know. You need protection, real protection. I can't afford private security. Then talk to your lawyer. There has to be something. Emily looked up. There isn't. Not unless they catch someone. Not unless there's an actual credible threat. That guy was a credible threat. He was a loud asshole. There's a difference. Kyle sat beside her. You can't keep doing this. What choice do I have? You could drop the lawsuit. The words hung between them. Is that what you think I should do? Emily asked. I think I don't want to see you get hurt. Or worse. He looked at her. This isn't worth your life. It's not about my life. It's about everyone who comes after me. That's noble? It's also a great way to end up dead. Emily stood. I need to get back to work. Emily, I'm not dropping it, Kyle. So you can either support me or you can get out of my way. She walked out before he could respond. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in Rita's spare bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation at the hospital, the man's face, his rage, the way he'd looked at her like she was something inhuman. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She should have ignored it. She didn't. The message was simple. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Corner of 5th and Brennan. Come alone or people get hurt. Emily stared at the screen, blood turning to ice. Then she called Holloway. He answered on the second ring. It's midnight. I just got a threat, a meeting, tomorrow at 6. Don't go. They said people will get hurt if I don't. That's what they want you to think. You go there, you're walking into a trap. What if they're serious? Then we call the police. The police won't do anything until someone actually gets hurt. You know that. Silence. Emily, listen to me. Do not go to that meeting. Forward the message to me. I'll handle it. How? I'll figure it out. Just promise me you won't go. Emily looked at the message again. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. I promise. She hung up. But she was already planning. Because if someone wanted to meet her, if someone wanted to threaten her face to face, then maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to find out who was really behind all of this. She sat up, grabbed her laptop, and started digging. 5th and Brennan. Commercial district. Businesses. Warehouses. Not residential. She pulled up Street View, mapped the exits, noted the sight lines. Then she opened her closet and pulled out a box she hadn't touched in years. Inside, her old military gear. Not the uniform. The practical stuff. Tactical flashlight. Multi-tool. The kind of small, useful things you learned to carry when you operated in places where help wasn't coming. She packed them into a small bag. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., she'd be at 5th and Brennan. And whoever was waiting for her would find out that Emily Carter wasn't the person they thought she was. Not anymore. Emily spent the night cross-referencing property records for 5th and Brennan. 3 warehouses, 1 closed mechanic shop, 2 office buildings, both mostly vacant. She mapped every camera angle she could find on Street View, noted the blind spots, calculated response times for emergency services. By 5 a.m., she had a plan. By 6 a.m., she was second-guessing it. By noon, she'd committed. She told Rita she had a doctor's appointment, told Holloway she needed space to think, told no one the truth because the truth would get her stopped. At 4 p.m., she left Rita's apartment with the small tactical bag slung over her shoulder. Inside, flashlight, multi-tool, pepper spray, and her phone set to record audio automatically. She'd also tucked a small personal alarm into her jacket pocket, the kind that screamed at 130 decibels when you pulled the pin. She took an Uber to within 3 blocks of the location, then walked the rest. The area was industrial, transitioning into gentrification that hadn't quite arrived. Half the buildings had "for lease" signs. The other half looked abandoned. 5th and Brennan was a corner lot with a 3-story brick warehouse. Faded paint on the side advertised a textile company that probably hadn't existed since the 80s. Most windows were boarded up. 1 loading dock door hung partially open. Emily checked her watch. 5:47 p.m. She circled the block once, looking for the black sedan for any sign of who might be waiting. Nothing obvious, but that didn't mean they weren't there. At 5:55, she approached the corner and stopped in the middle of the intersection where she'd be visible from multiple angles. Then she waited. 6 p.m. came and went. The street stayed empty. No cars, no movement. Just the distant sound of traffic from the main road 2 blocks over. Emily's instincts screamed that this was wrong. Either a setup or a test. Maybe both. Her phone buzzed. Same unknown number. Inside, loading dock. She looked at the warehouse. At the partially open door leading into darkness. Every tactical bone in her body said, "Don't go in there." But if she didn't, whoever was doing this would keep escalating, keep threatening, keep hiding behind anonymity while destroying her life piece by piece. Emily pulled out her phone, sent her location to Holloway with a message. "If you don't hear from me in 30 minutes, send police here." Then she activated the audio recording, tucked the phone in her jacket pocket with the microphone exposed, and walked toward the loading dock. The door's gap was just wide enough to slip through. Inside, the warehouse was gutted, empty except for support pillars and debris. Afternoon light filtered through cracks in the boarded windows, creating long shadows across the concrete floor. "Hello?" Emily's voice echoed. No response. She took 3 steps inside, eyes adjusting to the dimness. The air smelled like rust and old motor oil. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy boots on concrete, coming from deeper in the building. A figure emerged from behind a pillar. Male. Average height. Wearing jeans and a dark hoodie, face partially hidden. "You came," he said. The voice was muffled, distorted. He was wearing something under the hood. A mask, maybe. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter." "It does to me." He moved closer. Emily held her ground but shifted her weight, ready to move. "You should have dropped the lawsuit," he said. "That's not happening. You don't understand what you're messing with. Then explain it to me." He stopped about 15 feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough that Emily couldn't make out details of his face. The people you're going after, they have friends, powerful friends, people who don't like being embarrassed. You mean Monroe? Toller? They're street cops. They don't have power. Not them, the people who protect them. The union, the brass, the politicians who depend on the union. His voice carried an edge now. You think this is about you? It's not. It's about making sure nobody else gets ideas. So you're here to scare me off. I'm here to give you one last chance. Emily's hand inched toward her pocket, toward the alarm. Or what? Or things get worse, a lot worse. Worse than slashing my tires, spray painting my building, sending death threats? Those weren't death threats. Those were warnings. He took another step forward. You want to know what a real threat looks like? That's when Emily saw the second figure, moving in from her left, circling behind her, cutting off the exit. Her heart kicked into overdrive. Here's the deal, the first man said. You drop the lawsuit today. You go on the news, say it was all a misunderstanding, that you hold no ill will toward the department. You do that, and this ends. And if I don't, then accidents start happening. People you care about. That charge nurse, Rita, that doctor, Kyle. Maybe they get mugged. Maybe their cars get broken into. Maybe worse. Rage flooded through Emily, hot and immediate. You're threatening my friends. I'm explaining consequences. The second figure was close now. Emily could hear him breathing. She pulled the alarm from her pocket and yanked the pin. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. A high-pitched shriek that bounced off the concrete walls and filled the warehouse with noise. Both men recoiled, hands going to their ears. Emily didn't wait. She ran for the loading dock, ducking under the first man's grab, pushing past the second. She hit the door at full speed and burst into daylight, the alarm still screaming behind her. She didn't stop, didn't look back, just sprinted down the block, fumbling for her phone, dialing 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being chased. 2 men. Fifth and Brennan, outside the old textile warehouse. Ma'am, slow down. Are you in immediate danger? Yes, send someone now. She ducked into an alley, pressed herself against a wall, trying to catch her breath. The alarm had stopped. Everything was suddenly, terrifyingly quiet. Then sirens. Growing louder. 2 patrol cars screamed around the corner, lights blazing. Emily stepped out of the alley, waving them down. The officers who emerged weren't from the precinct that arrested her. Different jurisdiction, different faces. Are you Emily Carter? The first officer asked. Yes. There were 2 men in that warehouse. They threatened me. Stay here. They moved toward the building, hands on their weapons. Emily watched, pulse still hammering. 5 minutes later, they came back. Building's empty. What? No, they were there, 2 of them, one in a hoodie. Ma'am, we cleared the entire warehouse. There's nobody inside. Emily stared at them. They were there. Did you see their faces? No, one was wearing a mask. Did they touch you, assault you in any way? They threatened me and my friends. The officers exchanged a glance. Did they threaten you directly? Use specific language? Emily's stomach sank. She knew where this was going. They told me to drop my lawsuit or people I care about would have accidents. That's not a direct threat. It's implied intimidation. But what? They cornered me in an abandoned building. You went there voluntarily, correct? In response to a text message? Yes, but do you still have the message? Emily pulled out her phone, opened her texts. The message was gone. Not just deleted, gone. Like it had never existed. I don't understand. It was here. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Ma'am, without evidence of the message, without witnesses, without any physical contact, there's not much we can do. So they can just threaten me and walk away? We'll file a report. We can increase patrols in the area, but unless we have something concrete, this is unbelievable. The younger officer actually looked sympathetic. Look, I believe something happened, but our hands are tied without evidence. They took her statement anyway. Gave her a case number. Told her to call if anything else happened. Then they left. Emily stood on the corner as the sun sank lower, watching the patrol cars disappear. She'd been set up, lured there, threatened, then left with nothing to prove it. The text deleted remotely. The men vanished. No evidence, no witnesses. Professional. Her phone rang. Holloway. Where the hell are you? I got your location drop and almost had a heart attack. I'm fine. Emily, what happened? She told him. All of it. The silence on the other end lasted too long. When Holloway finally spoke, his voice was tight. You could have been killed. I wasn't. That's not the point. You walked into a trap without backup, without telling anyone. I told you. I sent you my location. After you were already there. He exhaled sharply. This is serious. They're not just trying to scare you anymore. They're escalating to direct confrontation. I know. Do you? Because you're acting like you can handle this alone. What else am I supposed to do? The police won't help. The department wants me gone. The only person I can count on is myself. That's not true. You have me. You have Monica. You have people who had past tense. Those men threatened Rita and Kyle. Anyone close to me is a target now. Then we get you protection. With what money? I'm barely covering rent. Holloway went quiet. Let me make some calls. Don't. I'm making calls. Stay at Rita's. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll be in touch. He hung up. Emily stood there for another minute, then started walking. Not back to Rita's. Not yet. She had one more stop to make. Lieutenant Brennan lived in a quiet suburb 20 minutes from downtown. Small house, neat lawn, the kind of place that suggested a person who valued order. Emily knocked at 7 p.m. Brennan answered in jeans and a sweatshirt, surprise flickering across her face. Miss Carter, this is unexpected. I need to talk to you. This isn't a good time. It's important. Brennan hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. Inside, the house was as neat as the exterior. Books on shelves, photos on the wall. Brennan in uniform, receiving commendations. Brennan with what looked like family. They sat in the living room. Brennan didn't offer coffee. What's this about? She asked. Emily told her about the warehouse, about the threats, about the disappeared message and the empty building. Brennan's expression grew darker with each detail. You should have called me before going there. Would you have come? I would have stopped you from going at all. That's why I didn't call. Brennan leaned back. You think this was organized, professional? I know it was. The union? Who else has the resources, the reach? Brennan didn't deny it. Do you have any proof? No, that's the problem. They're too smart to leave evidence. Then there's nothing I can do. Emily leaned forward. You said you'd help, that if I needed documents, records, anything, you'd provide it. That was before you started playing vigilante. I'm not. You went to a meeting set up by people trying to intimidate you. Alone. In an abandoned building. That's not seeking justice. That's looking for a fight. Maybe I am. Emily's voice was quiet now, steady. Maybe I'm tired of being the victim, of running, of waiting for the system to protect me when it's the system that's trying to bury me. Brennan said nothing. You told me some of you give a damn, Emily continued. Prove it. Give me something I can use. Like what? Internal affairs reports, complaint histories, anything showing a pattern of misconduct. That's confidential. So is threatening a civilian, so is coordinating harassment. But they're doing it anyway. Brennan stood, walked to the window, stared out at the darkening street. If I give you anything and it gets traced back to me, my career is over. If you don't, how many more people go through what I went through? The silence stretched. Finally, Brennan turned. I'll see what I can do. No promises. That's all I'm asking. Give me 3 days. Emily stood. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. And Emily? Brennan's eyes were hard. No more solo investigations. You want to be a hero? Join the fire department. You want justice? Let the process work. The process hasn't been working. Then make it work. But do it smart. Yeah. Emily returned to Rita's apartment after 9. Rita was in the kitchen, making tea, and she took one look at Emily and pointed to a chair. Sit. Emily sat. Rita poured 2 cups, set one in front of Emily, and sat across from her. Kyle called. Said you had an incident at the hospital today. Then you disappeared for 6 hours. Want to tell me what's going on? I'm handling it. That's not an answer. Emily wrapped her hands around the mug. Someone's trying to scare me off the lawsuit. They're threatening people I care about. Rita's expression didn't change. Threatening how? Implying that accidents might happen. To you, to Kyle, to anyone close to me. So you thought the best response was to shut me out? I thought the best response was to keep you safe. By lying to me? By not making you a target. Rita's laugh was sharp. Emily, I've been a nurse in this city for 15 years. I've dealt with gang members, domestic abusers, and people high out of their minds trying to stab me with dirty needles. You think some corrupt cops scare me? They should. Maybe. But I'm not backing down, and neither are you. She reached across and gripped Emily's hand. We're in this together. Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. Emily felt her throat tighten. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Then let me help. Let me be here. That's what friends do. For a moment, Emily couldn't speak. Then, okay? Okay? Okay. Rita squeezed her hand once and let go. Good. Now drink your tea and tell me everything. So Emily did. 3 days later, Brennan called. Meet me tomorrow, 7 a.m. There's a diner on Route 9 called Maggie's. Come alone. Emily was there at 6:50, sitting in a back booth with a view of the door. Brennan arrived exactly at 7, carrying a worn leather messenger bag. She slid into the booth without greeting, set the bag between them, and ordered coffee from the waitress. Once they were alone, she spoke quietly. What I'm about to give you is career suicide if it's traced back to me. So we never had this conversation. You never saw these documents, and if anyone asks, you tell them you got them from a public records request. Understood. Brennan pulled out a thick manila folder. This is 5 years of internal complaints against officers in the unit that arrested you. Most were dismissed. A few resulted in retraining. None resulted in termination. Emily opened the folder. Page after page of incident reports. Excessive force complaints. Racial profiling allegations. Wrongful detention claims. And in almost every case, the officers involved were cleared. Monroe's got 8 complaints, Brennan said. Toller has 6. Webb has 2. All dismissed or ruled unfounded. How is that possible? Because the people reviewing them are part of the same system. They protect their own. She tapped one report. This one's particularly relevant. Woman named Lisa Ortiz, detained for 3 hours, matching description of a suspect. Turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. She filed a complaint. It was dismissed because the officers acted in good faith. Emily stared at the report. The circumstances were almost identical to hers. When was this? 14 months ago. What happened to her? She moved to another state. Couldn't handle the stress. Emily flipped through more reports. Each one a person whose life had been disrupted. Each one dismissed. Each one forgotten. There's something else, Brennan said. She pulled out a second, smaller folder. This is off book. Audio recordings from officer body cameras that were supposed to be deleted but weren't. Why would they delete them? Because they show the officers knew you weren't the suspect before they took you in. Emily's blood went cold. What? Dispatch sent an update 20 minutes after your initial stop. Physical description of the actual suspect. Height, weight, hair color, all different from yours. Monroe and Toller got the update on their radio, and they arrested you anyway. Why? Best guess? They'd already committed. Admitting they were wrong meant paperwork, scrutiny, possible discipline. Easier to process you and hope it sorted itself out. Emily felt rage building in her chest. They knew, and they still held me. Yes. Where are these recordings? Brennan slid a thumb drive across the table. On here. But if you use them, it'll be obvious they came from inside. Someone will get burned. Are you willing to take that risk? Brennan looked at her for a long moment. I've been a cop for 26 years. I've seen good people do bad things because the system made it easy. I've seen bad people get protected because the system prioritized loyalty over accountability. She stood. I'm tired of it. So yeah, I'm willing. She left $40 on the table and walked out. Emily sat there, staring at the thumb drive. This was it. The evidence she needed. Proof of misconduct. Proof that her arrest wasn't a mistake. It was negligence bordering on malice. She grabbed the folders and the drive, left the diner, and drove straight to Holloway's office. 10. Monica was the one who went through the audio files. She sat at her computer, headphones on, face growing progressively more grim as she listened. After 30 minutes, she pulled the headphones off. This is damning. Holloway leaned over her shoulder, reading the transcript she'd been typing. Play it. Monica hit play. Static, then voices. Monroe's voice, distinct. Dispatch. We've got the suspect detained. White female, dark jacket, silver sedan. Another voice, dispatcher. Copy that, Unit 47. Be advised, updated description from witness. Suspect is 5'8". Blonde hair, approximately 160 pounds. Pause. Toller's voice. That's not who we've got. Monroe. We're already committed. Process her and let booking sort it out. Toller. You sure? Monroe. Yeah. Worst case, it's a few hours. She'll be fine. The recording ended. Silence filled the office. They knew, Monica said quietly. They knew she wasn't the suspect, and they took her in anyway. Holloway's face was stone. How many other files are on this drive? 17. Listen to all of them. Transcribe everything. We're filing an amended complaint, and we're holding a press conference. Emily looked at him. When? Tomorrow. That's fast. That's necessary. The longer we wait, the more time they have to spin this. He turned to her. Are you ready for what comes next? Because this is going to detonate. Emily thought about the warehouse, about the threats, about every moment since that first siren locked onto her car. I'm ready. The press conference was held outside the courthouse at 10 a.m. Holloway stood at a podium, Emily beside him, Monica slightly behind. Cameras from every local news station and 2 national networks pointed at them. Reporters crowded close, microphones extended. Holloway began, 2 months ago, Emily Carter was wrongfully arrested and detained for 6 hours despite clear evidence of her innocence. We now have proof that the officers involved knew she was not the suspect they were looking for and arrested her anyway. He played the audio. Monroe's voice filled the air. Process her and let booking sort it out. The crowd erupted. Questions shouted over each other. Holloway raised a hand. We are filing an amended complaint that includes evidence of deliberate misconduct, violation of civil rights, and falsification of police reports. We are also calling for a full investigation into the department's practices and the immediate suspension of Officers Garrett Monroe and Vince Toller. More questions. Holloway fielded them with precision. Emily stood silent, watching the cameras, knowing her face would be on every screen in the city by noon. When it was over, they retreated inside. Emily's phone was already exploding with notifications. Now we wait, Holloway said. They didn't have to wait long. By 2 p.m., the department issued a statement. The allegations are under review. The officers in question have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. By 4 p.m., the police union called the press conference a publicity stunt and promised to vigorously defend their officers. By 6 p.m., protesters had gathered outside the precinct, some supporting Emily, some supporting the police. The 2 groups shouted at each other across barricades while news helicopters circled overhead. Emily watched it all from Holloway's office, feeling surreal. It's working, Monica said. Public pressure is forcing their hand. Or it's making them desperate, Emily replied. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Hello, Ms. Carter. The voice was unfamiliar. Male, older, authoritative. My name is Chief Raymond Hollister. I'm calling to request a meeting. Emily put the phone on speaker. Why? Because I'd like to resolve this situation before it gets any worse. It's already pretty bad. I'm aware, which is why I'm reaching out. I think we can find a solution that works for everyone. I'm listening. Not over the phone. In person, tomorrow. My office. Just you and me. Emily looked at Holloway. He was already shaking his head. I'll need my attorney present, Emily said. This is off the record. A conversation between 2 people trying to find common ground. Then it shouldn't matter if my attorney is there. Pause. Fine. Tomorrow at 10. Don't be late. The line went dead. Holloway was already typing. He's going to offer you a settlement, a big one, in exchange for dropping everything and going away quietly. I'm not interested in money. Tell him that tomorrow, on record. Make him say what he's really offering. Chief Hollister's office was on the 4th floor of the main precinct building. Emily and Holloway were escorted up by an assistant, a young woman who looked nervous and wouldn't make eye contact. Hollister was in his 60s, silver hair, sharp suit, the kind of presence that commanded rooms. He stood when they entered, extending a hand. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. Emily shook it briefly. This is my attorney, David Holloway. Of course, Hollister gestured to chairs. Please. They sat. Hollister remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. Let me be direct, he said. What happened to you was unfortunate. The officers involved made errors in judgment. We're addressing those errors internally. Administrative leave isn't addressing it, Holloway said. It's the first step. There will be a full review. If misconduct is found, appropriate action will be taken. You mean the same review process that cleared them in 8 previous complaints? Hollister's expression didn't change. I can't speak to past investigations. I can only address the current situation. Then address it, Emily said. What are you offering? A settlement? Full compensation for your time, distress, and any damages incurred. A public apology. An assurance that this department will implement new training protocols to prevent similar incidents. How much? $250,000. The number hung in the air. Holloway whistled softly. That's generous. It's fair, Hollister said. In exchange, Ms. Carter drops the lawsuit, signs a non-disclosure agreement, and agrees not to pursue further legal action or make public statements about the incident. Emily looked at him. So you pay me to shut up and go away? I prefer to think of it as resolving a dispute that benefits no one if it continues. It benefits me. It exposes a broken system. It exposes 2 officers who made mistakes, not a system. Those officers knew I wasn't the suspect. They arrested me anyway. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Hollister's jaw tightened slightly. Ms. Carter, I understand you're angry. I'm not angry. I'm determined. There's a difference. Then let me be equally direct. If you reject this offer and continue this lawsuit, it will consume years of your life. It will cost you money you don't have. It will subject you to scrutiny, harassment, and stress that most people can't endure. And at the end of it, you might lose. Or I might win. Maybe. But even if you do, what changes? 2 officers get reprimanded or fired. The system moves on. Nothing fundamentally shifts. Emily stood. You're right that I might lose, but I'm guaranteed to lose if I take your money and disappear, because then nothing changes at all. Hollister studied her. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. She walked out. Holloway followed. In the elevator, he turned to her. You just turned down $250,000. I know. Most people wouldn't. I'm not most people. He smiled. No, you're really not. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Again. She lay in Rita's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the chief's offer. $250,000. Enough to pay off her student loans. Enough to start over somewhere new. Enough to make all of this go away. But it wouldn't make it go away. Not really. It would just bury it under money and silence. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it, expecting another threat. It was a news alert. Breaking. Officer Daniel Ramirez speaks out on Emily Carter case. She clicked the link. Video footage showed Ramirez, looking healthier than the last time she'd seen him, standing in front of microphones. I'm alive because of Emily Carter, he said. She saved my life when she had every reason not to. And the fact that we arrested her, that we held her, knowing she wasn't the person we were looking for, that's on us. That's on me. The camera zoomed closer. I've been a cop for 12 years. I believe in this job. But I also believe in accountability. And what happened to Ms. Carter was wrong. Not just procedurally, morally. She deserves justice. And if that means I have to stand here and say my department messed up, then that's what I'm doing. The video ended. Emily stared at the screen. Ramirez had just destroyed his career. For her. Her phone rang immediately. Holloway. Did you see it? Yeah. This changes everything. A cop admitting fault on record? The department can't bury this now. Emily was still processing. He didn't have to do that. No, but he did. And now we push. Hard. Whumped. The next 48 hours were a blur. More officers came forward. Not publicly, but through back channels. Anonymous tips to Holloway. Documents left in unmarked envelopes. Each one adding to the pile of evidence showing a pattern of misconduct stretching back years. The media coverage intensified. National outlets picked up the story. Legal analysts debated it on cable news. Social media turned Emily into a symbol, some calling her a hero, others a troublemaker, most just watching to see what happened next. The department tried to control the narrative, issued statements, held press briefings, but every time they spoke, another piece of evidence surfaced to contradict them. And then the final domino fell. Lieutenant Brennan went public. She held her own press conference in full uniform and laid out everything. The complaints that had been buried, the investigations that had been sabotaged, the culture of protecting officers over serving justice. I joined this department to help people, she said, voice steady. But somewhere along the way, we lost sight of what that means. We started protecting the badge instead of the community, and I can't be part of that anymore. She resigned on camera. The city exploded. Protests grew larger. The mayor called for an independent investigation. The district attorney announced a review of all cases involving the officers in question, and Emily watched it all, feeling like she was standing in the eye of a hurricane. So, the final hearing was set for 3 weeks later, but 2 days before it was scheduled, Holloway got a call. They want to settle, he told Emily. Full terms, public apology, admission of wrongdoing, policy changes, and they're not asking for an NDA. Emily sat in his office, trying to process. Why now? Because they're hemorrhaging public support. Because the independent investigation is going to uncover things they don't want uncovered. Because fighting you in court means putting their entire department on trial. He leaned forward. Emily, this is it. This is what we were fighting for. What about Monroe and Toller? Terminated, effective immediately. They'll never work in law enforcement again. And the others, the ones who covered for them, under review. Some will be demoted. Some will face discipline. It's not perfect, but it's real consequences. Emily looked out the window at the city below. What do they want from me? Your agreement. And they want you to speak at a community forum, to tell your story, to be part of the healing process. Healing. I know it sounds hollow, but they're trying to rebuild trust, and you're the face of why it broke. Emily was quiet for a long time. Then, I'll do the forum, but I'm not letting them control the narrative. I say what I want. No script. They won't like that. I don't care. Holloway smiled. I'll tell them. But the community forum was held in a high school auditorium packed with residents, activists, officers, and press. Emily sat on a stage with the police chief, the mayor, and several community leaders. When it was her turn to speak, she walked to the microphone. For a moment, she just looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of faces. Some she recognized. Most she didn't. My name is Emily Carter, she began. 2 months ago, I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. I was held for 6 hours despite evidence of my innocence. And when I was finally released, it was only because I proved myself useful. The room was silent. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to become a symbol or a headline. I just wanted to go to work, do my job, and live my life. But that choice was taken from me. Not because I did anything wrong, because the people sworn to protect me decided I didn't matter. She paused. I'm standing here today because I refused to accept that, because I decided that my life, my dignity, my truth, they mattered, and I wasn't going to let anyone tell me otherwise. She looked directly at Chief Hollister. The settlement we've reached is a start, but it's only a start. Real change doesn't come from one lawsuit or one press conference. It comes from a commitment to do better. Every day. Every interaction. Every decision. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause started slowly, then built. Emily didn't smile, didn't wave, just walked off the stage. Outside, Holloway was waiting. That was perfect. It was honest. Same thing. They walked to the parking lot together. Rita and Kyle were there, leaning against Rita's car. We saw it on the live stream, Rita said. You killed it. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's enough. Emily looked at the three of them, her lawyer, her friend, her colleague, the people who'd stood by her when it would have been easier to walk away. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you. Don't get sappy on us now, Rita said. You've got a reputation to maintain. Emily almost smiled. Almost. Because as they stood there, a black sedan pulled into the lot. The same make and model as the one that had been following her. It stopped 20 feet away. The driver's door opened, and Officer Garrett Monroe stepped out. Emily's hand instinctively went to her phone. Rita moved closer. Kyle positioned himself slightly in front of both of them. Holloway's entire body tensed. Monroe raised both hands, palms out. I'm not here to start anything. Then leave, Emily said. I will. After I say what I came to say. You've said enough. Emily, please. His voice cracked slightly on her name. Just give me 2 minutes. Holloway stepped forward. My client has no obligation to speak with you. You're terminated. You're facing potential criminal charges. Anything you say can and will. I know what I'm facing. Monroe's hands dropped. I'm not stupid. I know I destroyed my career, my reputation, maybe my whole life. I'm not here to fix that. I'm here because... He looked directly at Emily. Because I owe you the truth. The truth? Emily's voice was sharp. The truth is you arrested me knowing I wasn't the suspect. You held me for 6 hours. You ignored every piece of evidence because admitting you were wrong was inconvenient. You're right. The admission hung in the air. I knew 30 minutes in that we'd made a mistake, Monroe continued. The description didn't match. Your ID checked out. Everything you said was verifiable, but I'd already written the report, already called it in, and walking it back meant questions, scrutiny, maybe discipline. He looked down. So I didn't. I let you sit there. Told myself it would sort itself out, that a few hours wouldn't matter. They mattered to me. I know that now. He took a breath. I spent 22 years as a cop. I thought I was one of the good ones. Helped people. Solved cases. Did the job right. But somewhere along the way, I started caring more about covering my ass than doing what was right. And you paid the price for that. Emily said nothing. I can't undo it, Monroe said. I can't give you back those hours or erase what happened. All I can do is stand here and tell you that I'm sorry, truly sorry. Not because my career is over, not because you sued. Because what I did to you was wrong, and I knew it was wrong when I was doing it. Silence. That's it, he said. That's what I came to say. He started to turn back to his car. Wait, Emily said. He stopped. Why now? Why come here, risk this conversation when you could have just disappeared? Monroe turned back. Because Ramirez called me. Told me what you did for him. How you saved his life after what we put you through. And I realized you're a better person in your worst moment than I am in my best. His voice roughened. I needed you to know that I see that I'm sorry, and that if I could go back and do it differently, I would. Emily studied him, saw the lines around his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged, the genuine regret written across his face. It didn't erase what he'd done, didn't fix the damage, but it was something. I accept your apology, she said quietly, but that doesn't mean I forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. And it doesn't change what needs to happen. You made choices. Now you live with the consequences. I know. He got back in his car and drove away. Rita let out a long breath. That was unexpected. Yeah, Emily said. Kyle looked at her. You okay? I don't know. Ask me tomorrow. Holloway's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression shifting from neutral to surprised. Are you sure? Okay, we'll be there. He hung up and turned to Emily. That was the DA's office. They want to meet tonight. About what? They wouldn't say over the phone, but it sounded urgent. The district attorney's office was in a government building downtown, all marble floors and fluorescent lighting. Emily and Holloway were shown to a conference room where 3 people waited. District Attorney Patricia Vance, a severe woman in her 50s, an assistant DA named Marcus Webb, and a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as FBI Special Agent Thomas Hargrove. Emily's stomach dropped. FBI? Please, sit, Vance said. They sat. Vance folded her hands on the table. Ms. Carter, the events of the past 2 months have brought to light some troubling patterns within our police department. Patterns that extend beyond wrongful arrests. What kind of patterns? Holloway asked. Agent Hargrove spoke. Evidence tampering, falsified reports, witness intimidation. We've been investigating for 6 months, but your case broke it wide open. Emily blinked. My case? The audio recordings you provided showed officers deliberately ignoring protocol. When we dug deeper, we found similar incidents across multiple cases, arrests that shouldn't have been made, evidence that disappeared, witnesses who suddenly recanted. He pulled out a tablet and turned it toward them. We've identified 12 cases in the past 3 years with irregularities, all involving the same unit. Monroe and Toller? Emily asked. And 4 others. They weren't just making mistakes. They were systematically cutting corners, falsifying reports to close cases faster, and covering for each other when things went wrong. Vance leaned forward. Your lawsuit and the subsequent publicity gave us the leverage we needed to secure warrants, interview witnesses who'd been too afraid to talk, and build a federal case. We're bringing charges against 6 officers for civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Emily tried to process. You're saying my case wasn't an isolated incident. No, it was part of a larger pattern, and you exposing it has given us the opening to dismantle the entire operation. How many people were affected? That we know of? At least 40, probably more. Some were arrested on false pretenses. Others had charges enhanced based on fabricated evidence. A few are currently in prison on convictions we're now reviewing. The weight of it settled over Emily. 40 people. 40 lives disrupted because officers decided the rules didn't apply to them. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Your testimony," Vance said. "When this goes to trial, you'll be a key witness. Your case is the most thoroughly documented, and your credibility is unimpeachable." "When?" 6 to 8 months. We're still building the case. Holloway spoke up. "What about protection? Ms. Carter has already been threatened multiple times." "We're aware," Hargrove said. "We believe the threats came from associates of the officers, union reps trying to pressure you into dropping the lawsuit. Now that it's a federal case, those associates are under investigation too. We'll provide protection if needed, but we think the risk has diminished significantly." Emily thought about the warehouse, the deleted texts, the surveillance. "You think? You don't know. Nothing's certain. But the people behind the threats are now facing serious legal consequences themselves. They're more worried about saving their own necks than harassing you." It wasn't exactly reassuring, but it was something. "I'll testify," Emily said. "Good." Vance stood, extending her hand. "Thank you, Ms. Carter. What you did took courage, and it's going to help a lot of people get justice." As they left the building, Holloway turned to her. "You know what this means, right?" "What?" "You didn't just win your case. You triggered a federal investigation that's going to reshape this entire department." Emily looked up at the building. At the lights still burning in windows where prosecutors were probably working late, building cases, seeking accountability. "I didn't set out to do that," she said. "I know, but you did it anyway." The next 3 months were a strange kind of limbo. The settlement was finalized. Emily received a formal apology from the city, a financial payment that covered her legal fees and then some, and a commitment to policy reforms. The department implemented new training protocols, established an independent oversight board, created a process for civilians to appeal wrongful detentions. None of it brought back the hours she'd lost or erased the trauma. But it was tangible change, the kind that might prevent someone else from going through what she had. Monroe and Toller were formally charged with federal civil rights violations. 4 other officers were indicted on related charges. The trials were set to begin in 6 months. Emily returned to work at Silverline, picked up her regular shifts, tried to rebuild some sense of normalcy. But normal didn't exist anymore. Patients recognized her. Some thanked her. Some asked for selfies. A few made comments about not trusting her because she was against the police. Colleagues were supportive, but there was an awkwardness now. A awareness that Emily wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was the nurse. The one from the news, the one who'd sued the department and won. Rita noticed. "You're different." "I know. Not in a bad way, just quieter, more guarded." Emily was restocking supplies in the medication room. "People see me differently now, like I'm fragile or angry or some kind of activist." "Aren't you?" "I'm a nurse, that's all I wanted to be." "But you're also the person who fought back, who didn't let them bury you. Whether you wanted that role or not, you've got it now. And what am I supposed to do with it?" Rita leaned against the doorframe. "Whatever you want, just don't waste it." 2 weeks later, Emily got an email from someone named Dr. Sarah Kwan, director of the Civil Rights Legal Aid Clinic at the State University. "Ms. Carter, I've been following your case closely. I'm reaching out because we're developing a training program for medical professionals on how to recognize and respond to civil rights violations, both as victims and as witnesses. Your experience could be invaluable in helping others understand their rights and the importance of documentation. Would you be interested in speaking to our students?" "No pressure. Just a conversation about what you learned and what you wish you'd known. Best regards, Sarah Kwan." Emily stared at the email for a long time. Then she replied, "When?" The clinic was housed in a renovated building on campus. Emily arrived on a Tuesday evening to find a classroom full of medical students, nursing students, and a few practicing healthcare workers who'd come for the continuing education credits. Dr. Kwan introduced her simply. "Emily Carter is a registered nurse who experienced a wrongful arrest and chose to fight back. She's here to share her story and answer your questions." Emily stood at the front of the room, suddenly nervous. She wasn't a public speaker. Wasn't used to having dozens of eyes on her, waiting for wisdom she wasn't sure she had. But she started talking about the arrest, about the hours in the holding room, about the moment she'd had to choose between silence and action. "I didn't know what I was getting into," she said. I thought filing a lawsuit meant a few meetings with a lawyer and maybe a settlement. I didn't realize it would consume my life for months, that I'd be threatened, that I'd second-guess myself every single day. A student raised her hand. Do you regret it? Emily considered. Sometimes. When I couldn't sleep because of the threats. When reporters camped outside my building. When I saw how it affected people around me. Yeah, in those moments, I regretted it. But overall? No, because if I'd stayed silent, nothing would have changed. Monroe and Toller would still be on the street. Other people would still be getting arrested on flimsy pretenses. The system would have kept protecting itself. Another hand, a young man in scrubs. What would you tell someone going through something similar? Document everything. Take photos. Record conversations if it's legal in your state. Get names and badge numbers. Because memory fades and details get fuzzy. But documentation is evidence. What else? Find people you trust. A good lawyer. Friends who'll stand by you, because you can't do it alone. I tried. It almost broke me. A woman in the back spoke up. You saved the life of an officer who'd arrested you. How did you do that? How did you put aside what they'd done? Emily thought about Ramirez on the floor, about the compressions, about the choice that wasn't really a choice. I didn't put it aside. I was angry, hurt, felt betrayed. But in that moment, he wasn't the cop who arrested me. He was a patient who was dying. And I'm a nurse. Saving lives is what I do. I don't get to pick and choose based on whether someone deserves it. That's pretty noble. It's not noble. It's professional. There's a difference. She paused. But here's the thing. If I'd let him die, if I'd stood there and done nothing, they would have used it against me. They would have said I was vindictive, dangerous, that I let my anger override my duty. By saving him, I took away that narrative. I proved that even in my worst moment, I was still a better person than they were. The room went quiet. I'm not saying that to sound high and mighty, Emily continued. I'm saying it because optics matter, especially when you're fighting powerful institutions. They'll look for any excuse to discredit you. Don't give them one. More questions followed, about the legal process, about dealing with media, about maintaining your sanity when everything feels like it's falling apart. Emily answered them all as honestly as she could. When it was over, several students came up to thank her. One young woman, maybe 22, waited until everyone else had left. My brother was arrested last year, she said quietly. Mistaken identity. They held him for 2 days before they realized. He didn't file a complaint, didn't do anything. He was too scared. That's understandable. After hearing you talk, I think I'm going to help him file one, even if it's late, even if it doesn't go anywhere, because someone needs to know it happened. Emily felt something tight in her chest loosen. Good. Do it. And if you need resources, Dr. Kwan can connect you. The woman nodded and left. Dr. Kwan approached. That was excellent, really. You have a gift for making complex situations accessible. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the gift. She handed Emily a business card. I meant what I said about the training program. If you're interested in doing more of this, speaking to students, helping develop curriculum, we'd love to work with you. Emily looked at the card. Civil Rights Legal Aid Clinic. Director, Dr. Sarah Kwan. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. Emily drove home through evening traffic, mind churning. For months she'd been reacting to the arrest, to the threats, to the lawsuit. Every decision made in response to someone else's action. But speaking to those students, that had been different. That had been her choice, her voice. Her story used to help others. It felt like agency. Like control over something that had controlled her for too long. When she got back to Rita's apartment, she'd finally moved back to her own place last week, but still had dinner with Rita twice a week. Rita was making pasta. How'd it go? Rita asked. Good. Weird, but good. Define weird. Emily sat at the kitchen table. I think I might want to do more of it. The speaking thing. Helping people understand their rights. Rita looked up from the stove. Yeah? Yeah, Dr. Kwan offered to let me help develop training curriculum. I could do it part-time, keep my nursing job, but also, I don't know, use what happened to me for something productive. That sounds perfect. Does it? Because part of me just wants to forget all of this and move on. And the other part? The other part thinks maybe I can't move on until I turn this into something that matters. Rita turned off the stove and sat across from her. Listen to that part, because the Emily I know doesn't run from hard things. She faces them. and then she helps other people face them too. The federal trial began in early December. The courtroom was packed, media in the gallery, protesters outside. The 6 officers sat at the defense table, flanked by expensive lawyers. Emily testified on the 3rd day. She walked to the witness stand in a simple navy suit, raised her right hand, and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Moss, started gently. "Ms. Carter, can you tell the court what happened on the afternoon of September 14th? Emily did, calmly, methodically, walking through every detail: the stop, the arrest, the hours in the holding room, the ignored evidence. Moss played the audio recording. Monroe's voice filled the courtroom. "Process her and let booking sort it out." "What went through your mind when you first heard that recording?" Moss asked. "That they knew. They knew I wasn't who they were looking for, and they arrested me anyway." "Did that surprise you?" "Yes and no. I knew something was wrong during the arrest, but hearing them say it out loud, hearing the calculation in his voice, that made it real." The defense attorney, a man named Gerald Frost, cross-examined her aggressively. Tried to suggest she'd been argumentative during the arrest, that she'd refused to cooperate. Emily stayed calm, answered every question directly, let the evidence speak for itself. "Isn't it true, Ms. Carter, that you have a financial incentive to portray this arrest in the worst possible light? You received a substantial settlement, did you not?" "I received a settlement? Yes. But I filed the lawsuit before any settlement was offered. My motivation was accountability, not money." "You expect this jury to believe you turned down further settlement offers out of principle?" "I don't expect anything. I'm just telling you what happened." Frost tried several more angles. Each one fell flat. When Emily stepped down, she felt lighter, like she'd carried something heavy for months and finally set it down. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witnesses testified to other wrongful arrests, falsified reports, intimidation tactics. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 2 days, guilty on all major charges. The courtroom erupted, some cheering, some outraged. The judge banged her gavel for order. Sentencing was set for 6 weeks later. Emily wasn't there for the verdict. She'd gone back to work, determined to be present for her shift rather than waiting in a courthouse for validation. Rita texted her. They got them. All of them. Guilty. Emily read it during her break, felt something settle in her chest. Not quite relief, not quite satisfaction, just completion. She texted back, "Good." Then she went back to work. Sentencing came in January. Monroe got 18 months. Toller got 16. The others got sentences ranging from 12 to 24 months, depending on their level of involvement. None of them would work in law enforcement again. The department underwent a complete reorganization. The police chief resigned. Half the command staff was replaced. The Independent Oversight Board began reviewing thousands of past cases, and Emily Carter became a name synonymous with standing up to injustice. But she didn't feel like a symbol. She felt like a person who'd survived something terrible and found a way to make it mean something. Dr. Kwan's training program launched in February. Emily co-taught the first session, a workshop on civil rights for healthcare workers. 25 people attended. By March, they were running sessions twice a month with a waiting list. Emily kept her nursing job, worked 3 12-hour shifts a week, spent her other time developing curriculum, speaking to student groups, and consulting on cases similar to hers. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was a life that mattered. On a Tuesday in late April, almost exactly 8 months after the arrest, Emily was leaving the hospital after a night shift when she saw a familiar face in the parking lot. Officer Daniel Ramirez, out of uniform, civilian clothes. He approached hesitantly. "Ms. Carter, do you have a minute?" Emily stopped. "What do you need?" I wanted to update you. I left the department." "You quit?" "Yeah, after everything that came out, after the trial. I couldn't stay. Couldn't be part of a system that protected people like Monroe and Toller for so long." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "I'm going back to school, social work. Figure I can do more good that way." Emily studied him. "That's a big change." "So was almost dying." He smiled slightly. "You gave me a second chance at life. Seemed wrong to waste it doing something I'd stopped believing in." "What will you do?" "Work with at-risk youth. Try to keep them out of the system instead of putting them in it." He paused. "I know I can't undo what happened to you, what we did, but maybe I can prevent it from happening to someone else." Emily considered him, saw genuine intent, genuine change. Good luck. Thank you. And Ms. Carter, I meant what I said at the press conference. You're a better person than most of us deserve. He walked away before she could respond. Emily got in her car and sat there for a moment. 8 months ago, she'd been face down on pavement, cuffed and humiliated, treated like she was nothing. Now she was someone who'd changed laws, ended careers, and inspired others to stand up. She hadn't wanted any of it, but she'd done it anyway. And maybe that was the point. Maybe you didn't get to choose your defining moments. You just got to choose how you responded to them. Emily started her car and drove home. 6 months later, Emily stood in front of a crowd of 200 people at a civil rights conference. She'd been invited as a keynote speaker. The topic? From victim to advocate, using personal experience to drive systemic change. She looked out at the audience, activists, lawyers, survivors of injustice, people trying to make the world marginally less broken. My name is Emily Carter, she began, and I'm here to tell you that fighting back is worth it, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when everyone tells you to let it go and move on. She told her story, not for sympathy, not for applause, but as a roadmap for others walking similar paths. Here's what I learned, she said near the end. The system is designed to make you feel small, to make you believe that challenging it is futile, that you're just one person and they're a massive institution, and what possible difference could you make? She paused. But I was just one person. I didn't have money or power or connections. I just had the truth and the refusal to let them bury it. And that was enough. Not because I'm special, because the truth is powerful when you refuse to let it be silenced. The applause started. She raised a hand. I'm not done. Because here's the other thing I learned. You can't do it alone. I had a lawyer who believed in me when I had nothing to offer but a righteous anger and a story. I had friends who stood by me when standing by me meant becoming targets too. I had strangers who saw my case and decided to come forward with their own stories. Her voice strengthened. So if you're sitting here thinking your situation is hopeless, that you can't win, that it's not worth the fight, you're wrong. It is worth it. Not because you'll always win. You might not. But because fighting back, refusing to accept injustice, standing up even when you're terrified, that matters. It changes things. Maybe not overnight. Maybe not in ways you can immediately see, but it changes things. She stepped back from the podium. The standing ovation lasted 2 full minutes. His name. Later that evening, Emily sat in a hotel room scrolling through messages. Dozens of people from the conference had reached out, thanking her, asking for advice, sharing their own stories. One message stood out, from a young woman named Maria Ortiz. Miss Carter, my mother was one of the people affected by the same officers who arrested you. She was too scared to come forward then. But after seeing what you did, she gave a statement that helped the federal case. She wants you to know that you gave her courage. Thank you. Emily read it 3 times. This was why she'd fought, not for money or recognition, but for moments like this, for people like Maria's mother who'd been too afraid to speak until someone else spoke first. She typed a response. Tell your mother she's braver than she knows, and that I'm honored to have helped. Then she closed her laptop and looked out the window at the city below. Lights stretching to the horizon. Millions of lives, some in crisis, some in peace, all interconnected in ways they'd never see. Emily had spent 6 years in the military learning to save lives in impossible circumstances. She'd spent 4 years as a nurse doing the same in different ways. And now she was doing it again. Not with medicine or triage, but with truth and testimony and the stubborn refusal to let injustice win. It wasn't the path she'd expected, but it was hers, and she was just getting started. 1 year after her arrest, Emily stood in the same parking lot where it had all begun. She'd driven here deliberately, wanted to face it, to stand in the spot where patrol cars had boxed her in and see if it still had power over her. It didn't. It was just asphalt and painted lines and the normal flow of traffic. The fear was gone. The shame was gone. What remained was clarity. She thought about everything that had happened, the arrest, the fight, the trial, the aftermath. She thought about Monroe in prison, about Toller and the others facing the consequences of their choices. She thought about the 40 people whose cases were being reviewed, some already exonerated, others still waiting. She thought about the policy changes, the oversight board, the training programs. None of it perfect, none of it complete, but all of it real. Her phone buzzed. A reminder. Teaching session in 2 hours. Topic: Recognizing and reporting civil rights violations. Emily got back in her car. As she drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror, at the spot where it had all started, at the person she'd been, scared, confused, trying to explain her innocence to people who'd already decided she didn't matter. That person was gone. In her place was someone who understood that power didn't come from badges or positions or institutions. It came from refusing to be silent when silence was easier, from standing up when standing up meant standing alone, from believing that one voice, one story, one person could actually make a difference. Because they could. She had. And she wasn't done yet. The road stretched ahead, full of possibility, full of purpose, full of the kind of meaning you can't plan for but have to earn. Emily Carter, former combat medic, current nurse, accidental activist, drove toward it with her eyes open and her hands steady, ready for whatever came next. Because she'd learned the most important truth of all. You don't have to be fearless to be brave. You just have to show up, tell the truth, and refuse to let them make you disappear. Everything else follows.